Okay folks, I just wanted to have a quick chat about this epic winning altcoin pick Bone, which I first posted on the 19th of October last year and has now finally surpassed its targets, bringing 145% profits. So when we first posted this chart, the premise was to buy the retest after an SR flip of this key trend line. Now these instructions were based on historical price action to ensure that if you entered a trade, you had confirmation that it was very likely to go higher. Now, immediately after posting this on the 19th of October, the price action had its first attempt to break above this key resistance line as instructed. However, it really did not correct. It didn't properly flip this line from resistance to support. And if we zoom in just a little bit, we can have a look at what that looked like. So here we go. So the idea was to buy the retest of this key trend line here after a breakout. Now we did get a little retest, but it was pretty pathetic and then it rolled over. So if you had entered here, I mean, this isn't a really successful retest in my mind because the price action has broken up, but it's not bouncing off this trend line, it's bouncing below it. So therefore that's not retesting this line, it's retesting the line below it. So you really probably shouldn't have entered that trade. But if you had entered this trade and you bought the retest, then when you saw it began to roll over, then you would want to exit. And if you'd exited on the bearish retest here, you would have had no loss. But the trade was invalidated very quickly after posting it, as we didn't get a successful SR flip of this key trend line. All right, so you definitely wouldn't have bought in here and held all of this. If you had bought in here thinking that this line had flipped successfully, which it hadn't, the second you saw the price action come back down, you'd want to exit your trade, ideally at a minimal loss. And of course, because most likely when the price action breaks down, it will just want to come back up to check this trend line is still resistance and not support, and that would be a great point to exit if you had entered at no loss. So the price action comes back down, the premise of the trade was invalidated, and we certainly didn't come up anywhere close to up here. So a few months later in December, again, the premise of the trade was to buy the SR flip of this trend line, which means buy the retest. So the price action came up, and potentially if you had bought the breakout, which wasn't the instruction, you would have had 20% profits, but ultimately you would have needed to have sold at the first trend line, recognizing that the market conditions weren't quite there for this to move. But again, when the price action comes back down, we don't get a successful SR flip of this trend line. So it breaks out. As a trader, you want to have read my instructions, which was to buy the SR flip, which is buy it when the price action comes back down and bounces again off the line. The price action didn't do that. It comes straight back down. It can't hold this support line. Not enough buyers show up. And then basically we don't get a successful retest. So you shouldn't have entered this trade yet. Again, it has another few attempts, but no solid retest. It keeps struggling to bounce off this white line, and then again, it flips back to confirm the resistance. And then, of course, if you had entered this trade, you would have exited the second the price action comes back below this line and the premise was invalidated. And then, of course, it comes back down. You shouldn't have held this. So again, the original conception, the original idea for this trade was to buy the SR flip. That hasn't happened yet. It didn't happen back in October. It didn't happen in December. The price action came up, but we didn't have a successful bounce. We didn't have that lovely confirmation of that this was support. So you wouldn't have entered, but you would have had this set up in your back pocket, and you may have set an alert on this line. So when it did have a third attempt, you could have another look to see if you had a good entrance. So this time, the trade fulfilled itself exactly as I conceived back in October. The price action breaks up, you wait for the SR flip, the price action comes back down, we get this lovely, almost perfect bounce on this trend line. You could have entered there or waited, of course, for swing high confirmation. And then, of course, the price action was in a way, and within 5 days' time, you would have had 145% profits. Now, that would have required you to, of course, wait for this setup and the confirmation I specified to happen, and it would have taken a few months, as not all setups work out straight away. But that's the idea. If I post a setup, don't just buy it. Look at the criteria I've set to ensure that you've got the best chance of a successful trade. And we didn't have it here. we didn't have it here, but the second that we did get that confirmation, other traders see the same signal, that successful flip from resistance to support, and then of course everyone buys in, and then there's your money. That's how it works. Don't just buy into a setup blindly. Follow the instructions, or by your own or your own kind of or follow the own rules of your own strategy, which is ultimately wait for confirmation, wait for the necessary criteria based on historical trends to ensure that when you do enter this trade, it's got the best possible chance of breaking higher and bringing in good profits. So Bone, great trade, really super, but ultimately if you'd bought here when I posted in October, and you would have just held it, and most of the time you would have been in loss, and that's not the idea. You should have simply observed all of these attempted breakouts, recognized that there wasn't a successful SR flip, and then not entered. And then when you did get that successful SR flip, as we did a few days ago, then you buy in, and then look, there's your profits. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Just wanted to have a quick chat about that, as this is very important when I'm providing setups. They're not for you to buy in straight away necessarily. They are for you to follow the criteria and to ensure that that is met before entering for the best chance of quick gains.